kind of feels like a late night show.
Oh yeah.
Welcome to David Letterman. Can you introduce yourself to the people right here?
So my name is Steen, and I'm from Copenhagen, and I'm 51 years old. I started dancing in '82, popping. I learned it from TV, and then it was kind of like the only thing I was really good at. So I could look at dance on TV.
How old were you?
14.
14.
But before I did popping, I kind of like any dance that was on TV, I would try to copy it. Say if it was like Gene Kelly, or it was like John Travolta, or anything like with dancing, and I would just try and see if I could figure it out.
Did you like Michael?
No.
No? Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. No, because when I learned about Michael Jackson, mostly it was like in the 80s, and he already tried to change his face and plastic operations, and I liked Heavy D and the Boys and Salt and Pepper, and it seemed so fake, like compared to hip hop. Yeah.
But Michael was training with the EBs, right?
Yes.
The Electric Boogaloo's for the people.
With Pop and Taco and all of these guys.
Yeah. But that's a different talk.
Yeah.
So you were saying you got inspired by different kind of dancers?
Yeah, since I was little, and then I start winning competitions, '84, and...
like battles? There were battles already?
No, this was mostly competitions. And yeah, it's funny, we should talk about this. What is a competition, what is a battle? Because when you battle back then, you battle against somebody or a crew against a crew, which means that there's no judge and you're not going to win anything else but your rep. And that's a battle. And you can't really, I mean, I participated in competition, and you would kind of like win some money, or like a ghetto blaster, like they called it, or like chocolate or something like this, right? So, and yeah, exactly. And then later on, then I started winning so many competitions, and then these people from Malmö in Sweden, they said they had a battle for me, and I won a lot of battles in Malmö in Sweden, so I was like, yeah, hell yeah, I'm gonna do that.
But you were doing popping.
Popping.
That was your main focus. You don't have a history in.
Yeah, of course I do swipes and some windmills, and I was maybe the guy with the
small
most
thing, swipes.
Yeah, and I did the most graffiti in the city, also on trains. So when I'm growing up, we're going to a youth club, and there will be 1,000 people every Friday, and there will be about 20 or 30 crews, and everybody's battling against each other.
So the scene was quite big.
The scene was like really, really big.
Yeah.
Yeah. In 82, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, it was like a big scene.
A big community.
Yeah.
So you got invited to this big battle in Sweden?
Yes, and then the guy I battled was Damon Frost.
No.
And I thought I was really good. And then he ruined it.
Do you guys know who Damon Frost is?
Yeah.
Some of you do, some of you don't. Like he's like an amazing dancer, who has like an amazing.
He's an amazing person in general, because before he did his dancing, he did BMX riding, and when I met him, he's been popping since '76. I started in '82, and he learned from like the major best people. He comes from Berkeley, which would say San Francisco. San Francisco is also the hippie movement, and like the Black Panthers, from the Black Panthers to the Black Messengers. So this whole dance was political, and popping used to be called banging, and everything had like different names for different generations. So
well, that's also very interesting, because the hip hop culture comes from the States, and it comes from different cultures coming together, like the Puerto Ricans and
But popping started before the hip hop culture, right?
Because it's funk.
Yes, but is popping then hip hop?
That's a very good question.
Well, I don't know.
Well, me neither.
No, but if you ask people like Pop Tart and Taco and yeah, all these people, they started before hip hop. So of course it's pre-hip hop.
It's pre-hip hop.
Yeah.
So interesting, because it always, when we talk about the hip hop related dance styles, popping is something that's always mentioned. You know,
Mhm.
popping,
Yeah.
locking, house, crump, whatever.
Yeah.
But actually, it's not.
Yeah.
Like if you really look at the origins of it, it's pre-hip hop.
It's pre-hip hop, and in New York they were not so good at popping. Like in the beginning of the 80s, they had a different style, right? And in New York it was a lot with the floats and the glides. First time I went to New York would have been '86 to meet up with this guy called Lil Shake. He was the best popper in New York around that time, like '85, '6, and '7. Lil Shake is the like.
I was born in '85, man. I was
Yeah.
a baby.
Yeah, I was in Queens, Jamaica, trying to do this popping, and Damon was there with me because after I battled Damon, I brought him to London, and then we battled against Bebop and Danny Francis, and then all of us kind of like moved to Stockholm because Damon was living there. And he's such a genius, like an intellectual genius. So when I asked him, hey Damon, teach me like how to do the best wave. And then Damon is like, well Steen, so what kind of wave would you prefer to do? Is it electrical wave? Is it like a watery wave? Or then I had to think like for a long time. Every time I had a question, he had 10. So that's kind of like how I learned about dancing really like this, right?
Yeah. So actually, I learned of you through these two guys. I mean, I knew that you were around, that you were doing groundbreaking things,
Yeah.
but you really came into I think maybe the bigger picture, like worldwide, when the two guys, Nick and Jeppe or something. What are they?
Oh, Nick and Jeppe with the Robot Boys?
Yes, the Robot Boys.
Oh, I don't think so, because in '94 we battled for, there's 2 battles in Battle of the Year, right? And in '95 we battled for the final place against Flying Steps, and we won in Berlin. So back then there was only 3 crews, like almost, like there was Actual Force from Paris, and there's a Battle Squad from Germany, and there's Out of Control from Denmark, where I was from. In Out of Control it was people from England also in the crew. So we were not only from Denmark, it was actually pretty much from all
It was
around,
pretty
right?
global, yeah.
Yeah. So back then in the '90s, then that was it. That was and then Style Elements came. So there's no like Style Elements, and all these people grew up on the 3 European groups. Actually, it was like this. In America, everything stopped with hip hop dancing. They all quit, and it was not fashionable. Of course, there was a few individual.
It was disco that came up, right? The whole hip hop thing kind
No,
of died
it
down.
kind of like then swing beat. What's it called? Teddy Riley, the hip hop dancing, and all this came.
And nobody was doing the break and the.
No, you were told by the DJ in the club that you would have to leave the dance floor if you were breaking or something like that. Yeah, yeah.
So when was the period of time that you came to Holland?
That was already like '85, '86. I used to street perform in Amsterdam, and then later, that was for a couple of years, and then later on in the beginning of the '90s, I did a lot of stuff in Arnhem and Nijmegen, and I'm probably saying all
No,
these
it's
names
perfect,
wrong.
man. Arnhem.
And Eindhoven is maybe my favorite city to street perform in Europe. Like, and I street performed a lot there with live drums, and then Mori Koichiro from Japan and Fax from Paris. So we used to travel around, Mori, Fax and myself, to do street shows all around the world with a drummer. And Holland was kind of like the country because when you do it in Germany, you can get kicked away pretty easily, and sometimes we only have a tent in our Jeep, and then we will set up the tent somewhere for the night, and other places we will get kicked away, and actually in Holland you won't get kicked away. You might get invited in for some tea or something like that. So you guys should really be proud of yourself, like, and the place that you guys are having, because you can really feel it when you're street performing and you're traveling around the world. Like, how is the mentality of
You get
people?
appreciated more.
Yeah.
certain places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For example, in Spain, then we were doing street shows on the Spanish stairs. Then the next morning, this chef, he came and he wanted to cook a paella for us because he had this experience and now he need to cook for us.
Oh, nice.
That doesn't happen anywhere else but Spain. Yeah.
So, since you've been traveling all over the world, I'm very curious on what's your perspective on the Dutch scene right now, because you've been coming here for quite some time now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what would you say about it?
Well, there were some really good breakdancers in the 80s from Holland. They won a lot of I think they were Dutch and Turkish. Is that, does somebody know if this is correct?
Well, I think we had Paulo Nunes, the world champion
Yeah.
at that time,
Yeah,
the one
exactly.
with the short leg.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, he was a Cape Verdean b-boy. He used to be a soccer player,
Yeah,
but then he got interested into
Yeah.
b-boying,
yeah.
and then he won the world championships.
Mhm.
So yeah, and he was from Holland.
Yeah.
And right now,
Yeah.
the reigning champion that's winning all these battles is Menno, of course.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the kids in the Rockets is a guy called Rico
Mhm.
Supreme, and I used to watch him since he was about this tall.
Yeah, where does he live right now? Rico?
He lives in Eindhoven, right?
He's here again? Because I thought that he was. Yeah,
Not
okay. Well,
bad,
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just really connected, and you know, with like, since I work with all the b-boys and the poppers from around the world, because I started directing theater from '96, and I did my first own major plays. I directed dancing theater for some years, and then I changed into real theater, and that means with real manuscripts and words and all this stuff. And
I think this is also very interesting. It's a development in Holland.
yeah,
So right now we're having hip hop crews and the choreographers from the hip hop scene getting into theater,
dance theater, right?
dance theater.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I
it's
kind
quite
of
a.
took hip hop as a whole perspective. You
Yeah.
have the rhyming aspect.
So you
of
didn't
it.
only you didn't
No.
only took dance. Yeah.
No, it's because I choreographed Shakespeare and I choreographed these guys from the New York City Ballet and the Danish Royal Theatre. And when I was doing it, I kind of felt like, hey, okay, yeah, that's interesting. But then I thought, okay, I'm 33 years old. I was at the time, and then I was looking into how old were Shakespeare when he was writing Midsummer Night's Dream. And he was my age, and I'm thinking, okay, he'll know I'm going to understand this. What is it all about? And then there was this prima ballerina. She was 20 years older than me, and she was very generous. And she was trying to explain me, oh no, Steen, choreography is not a dance step, it's a function. So for example, we had to take some berries from a bush and then give it to one guy so he would eat it, and then just have 5 guys picking berries, put it in somebody's hand, him eating these berries, somebody lifting him up in a lift. I could see, okay, that told the story. And I was thinking, wow, that's incredible. I don't even have to make up choreography. I can just focus on actually telling the story exactly like how it is. And then I found out, so with the words, it's kind of like give the freedom to the dancing. Because with the words you can make a greater abstraction of the dancing. Now you don't have to tell a story with the dancing because the story is already in the people's head with the words.
So what would be the biggest obstacle, if there is any, if you work with hip hop dancers and you want to make a piece for the theater? Because there's always some different sets of
Yeah.
rules.
Yeah, you can say, then I had maybe it doesn't mean anything to you. Air Force crew is from Los Angeles and the oldest b-boy crew in Los Angeles. Then I had Willpower over in, for example, the Nutcracker. Then I would have Osama from Killer Bees, which is like one of the first guys who really perfected air flares together with Benny. And this guy is they're tough b-boys
Yeah.
coming from a hard
Yeah.
environment. And then I have this actor, And in the action scene is kind of like a slow motion fight, so everybody is fighting in slow motion. And then the actor, he's used to, when we work, right? And then this guy from LA, he's coming over to me, like after 15 minutes, he says, Steen, I can't have that. This guy, he can't keep hitting me. Like, he keep hitting me, like, and something's gonna happen. And that was this really famous actor. And then I brought these guys together and I said, look, you have a different perspective on like how do we work. So how to get these worlds to meet each other is something that takes time and patience and space most of all, right? Like it's okay to be different. It's like the beautiful thing about it is you're having people from Palestine, you're having people from America, from France, Saudi Arabia, you're having people from anywhere and they all have different backgrounds and different religions and all this, and it's just that we can make this work together is when I get really proud of everybody that we can do it together. So hip-hop for me is of course rhyming with words, it's music, composing music, it's doing graffiti, it's like having a language in pictures. It's all the movement and all these movement, where does it come from really? So it's this basically it's the same thing that they do in the theater. So when I found out that robot dancing got famous in the 1920s, I was kind of like, what? I thought it was in the 80s or maybe the 70s, but actually it got really famous 1920s. That's when the word robot was invented by this author. Eastern Europe, and then if you watch Charlie Chaplin or you watch like all the Bauhaus, Oscar Schlemmer, Kandinsky, like Picasso, the Paris Opera, like all these places, then you can actually tell they were doing robot dance and it became a huge hit in the 1920s, Metropolis, if you've seen the movie. Have you guys seen Metropolis?
Yeah.
With the robot dancing girl? Yeah, so I mean, that was...
Is it on YouTube? Should we?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can just look. You can also just write Mr. Roboto, Charlie
Okay.
Chaplin,
Alright.
and then he comes out and he does this thing.
Wow.
Like, so of course there's been people imitating anything we see, and then if you look further into the history, then you're gonna find out there's actually been mechanical devices in China for more than 2,000 years. And these like water mechanical devices, you put water into them, and then there's a figure that can go like this, right?
Like the real hydraulics.
Like the real hydraulics, actually like cogwheels and water. The same way that you have all these here in Holland. This stuff is from China, right?
Everything is from China, man.
I'm just saying they had cities like 3,000 years ago really functioning, and they had professional robot dancers 2,000 years ago. And all this stuff, when you're thinking of India and Bali and with all the separations, is really from what's it called, belly dancing. So everything we do is happened in cities, and it happens in cities because people that travel from all around the world, now they're here in this city, and then we get these cultures and we put them together. And for me, this is the best time ever for dancing, like ever. It was not big like this in the 80s. We didn't have any conversations like this in the 80s. Nobody had like, I could ask Damon, and I kept asking Damon, and he did like really a good job trying to explain. But what we have now, and what like all the young people, like my youngest students are like 8 and 9 years old, and they're totally badass. I'm thinking, what the hell's gonna happen in 40 years? Yeah.
So, because we don't have that long anymore, I'd like to give the crowd an opportunity to ask you some questions. So we have about a small 10 minutes, maybe 8 minutes. Does anybody have a question? Yeah, Jeff.
What do you think of the Dutch popping scene right now?
I mean, it's still coming up, and there's because I was just in Taipei and watching the popping scene in Taipei, and now watching the popping scene here now today. I mean, the level you guys have is really, 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 really high, and I really hope that you can support each other and get the best out of it, because I can really relate to it from Denmark also, right? But I think the level is high, but I think maybe the supporting culture that I saw in Taipei is a little bit stronger than what you guys have here. Like the
Can
way
you give an example on how you see that stronger, the support?
they are very friendly, everybody.
Yeah.
Like they have this kind of calmness about them. You did never see Bruce Lee panic, did you?
No.
Or you never saw Jackie Chan panic. So it's kind of like it's in their culture to take their time and just do what they need to, like express to the music. And yeah, I think just like being really supportive to each other is the best advice I can give. Battle all the time, but be supportive.
Nice. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I see a couple of questions. I'm going to go to the lady first, and then to you.
Yeah, I want to ask, what do you think about the social media influences on our dance community?
Yeah, that's a good question, right? I love it. Because, like I told you, I learned popping from TV. And I think with the internet and all the research you can do is fantastic. But, when that being said, then I learned everything I learned in person. I learned everything I learned by traveling, meeting the people, actually taking the risk of being there, understanding the culture, and being really, really humble and asking people questions. So I don't really teach in dance schools, but I teach all the time because, like I told you, I travel to London, I find these Danny Francis and Bebop in the street, I ask them questions, they answer. Same thing with Damon, same thing with Fox, with Langsam, yeah, Mr. Wiggles. Like everybody I meet, I ask them questions, I learn somebody. So when people come to me and ask me questions, or they want to learn something, I have to teach them for free, because I never paid to learn any of what I learned, and it totally changed my life. So whenever I get the chance to give something back to somebody who comes and asks for something, that's very important for me. So I think like it's fantastic with the internet, but it's also still as important that you need to travel to really get the real experience.
All right, thank you.
We got a question from the live stream coming from a viewer. He's asking, when you just started dancing the first time, were you like struggling, failing a lot, trying to get down what you were trying? Like how long did it take you to actually like, hey, I mastered this move or I mastered that move?
Yeah. Well, I thought I mastered it about like 3 weeks in the process. I thought I was really good, but like I told you, I met Damon. The real answer to this question is I started 82. 98, 16 years after this, then Damon told me in London on one night, wow Steen, I can really see you, I have your own style now. And it's very impressive. This is my teacher. I wanted to hear it a long time before that. I was waiting and waiting and waiting, but 16 years it took me to get my style, and I did a lot of strange stuff before that.
16 years, long time. Oh, I thought you had 5 questions. Okay. Anybody else? We got 5 minutes. Yes.
It's actually my young students, you can say, and just and also because I don't want to miss out, and people are so much better now than they were back in the 80s, and I'm thinking, oh wow, that was my dream. I really want to be a part of this. How can I be a part of this? And then just by practicing a lot, and of course I'm not doing like all my ground moves the same way. There's a lot of stuff that I change. And I was so lucky that I learned how to do slow motion. And all the slow motion technique is not from popping. It's actually a whole different sets of people that were doing that in Paris. So I'm kind of like the transformation of the age is also like a transformation of the styles. It doesn't, that's why maybe I started with all the tutting all of a sudden. I just try to keep it fresh and share it with the people, and hopefully I can keep I hope I can be a master by the age of 60, right? So I have 9 more years of hardcore practice.
We got time for one more question. Oh, yes.
What is in your eyes the biggest difference between the whole dancing culture now and back in the 80s?
Back in the 80s, it was a lot of like youth criminals getting together and getting their it was kind of like the people who didn't fit in society that all met up in this other place. And right now, it's like all these intelligent and like functioning people that's also taken part of it. I think it's not so street no more, and it's beautiful.
All right. Thank you very much.